Solomon's asking, the same question people are asking today. Why do bad things happen to good people? Now the Christians, again, we can come in, we can swing right in with a true, but shallow answer in light of the depth of a person's pain when they ask that question, right? And we can say, well, the gospel, there are no good people. And that's true. Right? The gospel is not that some people are good and some people are bad. This is not Christian faith. Some people are good, some people are bad. Try really hard to be one of the good people, and if you are, then God will love you. That's not Christianity. Okay? That's not Christianity. But at the same time, when we're talking with people, if you've ever had a moment in your life where you've really suffered, not an inconvenience, not like a shallow, temporary pain, but like a real pain, a real tragedy. Have you ever in your heart asked this question, God, why is this happening to me? And in your heart, you're thinking like, I don't feel like I have done the deeds of a person who would deserve this. In our imagination, we would want, how we would want the world to function is, if you are like a thief and a tyrant and a whole bunch of things I don't even want to mention, right? Like if you're one of those people, then bad things should happen to you. And we'd be perfectly fine with that. But then we think about the person who like loves their family, faithful to their spouse, generous in their community. And then bam, they get a brain aneurysm and they die. And we're thinking, despite our Christian faith, many of us, we're thinking that doesn't actually seem right, does it? Is anybody willing to go out on this limb with me? It doesn't seem right. And so Solomon's already seen that. And then when a person dies for Solomon, death is the final nail in the coffin of Solomon's hope that God really is good. Now Solomon still, he's going to choose to believe that, but he has no basis on which to believe that. And so he despairs. And so to state it plainly, if every person's life ends the same way, how can we really know whether God really, A, cares what happens down here, B, prefers righteousness to evil, or C, rewards a person for being righteous and wise? And Solomon says it like this. He says, he's examining this principle that the wise and the righteous and their deeds are in the hand of God. But then the very next sentence, he says, whether it's love or hate, nobody knows. Now, people are puzzled. What do you mean love or hate? What he's talking about is the love or hate of God. So he's really juxtaposing two problems, two things. One is his hope. I want to believe the righteous and the wise are in the hand of God. Now, the problem is, how can you know whether or not God loves a person? From Solomon's perspective, you can't. You can't actually look at a person's life. You can't look at the deeds that they do. You can't look at the words they say. Look at what he says. He's saying whether it is the righteous or the wicked or the good or the evil, the clean or the unclean, the person who sacrifices, that is the person who worships God, and the person who doesn't sacrifice, who doesn't worship God. The good one, the sinner, the person who swears an oath and is faithful to his word, and the person who's afraid to even make an oath, who won't stand by his word. And he's looking at all these practical things, and he's frustrated because you and I, with him, we would want to say, this list over here of the righteous and the good and the faithful and the honest, and God loves those people. And all these people over here, the people who are dishonest, who won't stand by their word, who are evil and don't worship God, like God hates those people. But Solomon is saying, no, look at how they all end up. Every single one of them goes into the ground. And because of that, how can you know? How can you know whether God loves you? And again, here we come swinging in with the gospel, as we should. And let me just tell you this, like the good news. How is it that you know the love of God? The cross. So ultimately, We're not to look to a person's deeds and say that person is loved by God because they are a really swell person. But it's in light of the cross. It's in light of what Jesus has done on your behalf. That is how you know that God loves you. Now, on a really practical level, how many of you believe in Jesus in here? How many of you have ever nonetheless wondered whether or not God loves you? How many of you have ever been stuck in the midst of a difficult time in life, a temptation, some pattern of sin, whatever it is, and even in spite of your faith in Jesus Christ and your knowledge that he died for you, on the practical level, you're still, I don't even know if God likes me. I don't know if God likes me. And Solomon, he doesn't have the gospel. Solomon doesn't have the cross. He doesn't have the resurrection. He's just looking at life. And he's saying that, I might want to believe that God loves that person who is honest and faithful and good, but then why do they have the same fate as the person who's dishonest and treacherous and wicked? And so he says then, earthly assessments are of no value in knowing whether or not you have God's love and favor. Do not think that a rich person is loved by God more than a poor person, because they both end up in the same place. Do not think that a wise person is loved by God more than a foolish person, for they both end up in the same place. Do not think, says Solomon, that a righteous person is loved by God more than a wicked person, because they both end up in the grave. And so the first problem that Solomon's trying to overcome in his hope in the goodness of God is this problem. If everyone dies, no matter what, how can we know that anyone is preferred by God? Do you understand?